Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the iBasso DX260 digital audio player, a $949 US device. This was sent to me directly from iBasso. They have made no attempt to influence my opinion on this piece in one way or the other, so all thoughts you are about to hear are mine and mine alone. If any retailers out there who I am affiliate link partners with carry this unit, I will put affiliate links down in the description where you can buy this, and if you like what I have to say about this product, please consider using one of those affiliate links. I will get a small kickback, and I only use affiliate link money to keep the channel running. All right, this was a really interesting device. This is the second iBasso DAP I have had the privilege of reviewing. The first is the DX180, which I will put a link to down in the description below. And I enjoyed getting to know this one. So why did I like this unit? Stick around right after Shameless self-promotion to find out.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
All right, iBasso DX260, $949 US. We'll do an overhead view and a piece of dog hair here. That's what it's like when you live with a dog. Okay. Anyway, $949 US. It just my general takeaway on this is it is probably my all-around favorite DAP to date. What does that mean? See my my links down in the description where I talk about the different DAPs that I have reviewed, and that will help you contextualize that statement. But yeah, this is a very refined, punchy, detailed, but smooth sound to it that I actually really enjoyed listening to. So let's get into all of why I like this unit. So under the hood here, we have 8 Cirrus Logic CS43198 DAC chips in an octo array configuration. All right, we also have an amplifier that is capable of 1015 milliwatts per channel. That's 1.015 watts per channel into a 32 ohm load from the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced output. There is 4 gigabytes of RAM on here, 64 gigabytes of internal memory, and there is a micro SD card slot for expanded memory. There's all kinds of other features and all of that in this device too. It has some pretty gaudy stats to it, statistics and specifications anyway. I will link to iBasso's website where you can read through all of that because again, it is plentiful, all right, in there. One of the key features also of this from a software side is that it is an Android-based player, but you also get the option of booting into iBasso's Mango operating system. And so I will show you what that is about here as the review unfolds as well, and I think there are a couple of advantages to using that Mango OS over Android. So we'll flesh that out as we go through in here as well. All right, so we'll do a unit tour here in just a moment. Let me show you a couple of the included accessories that I found pretty useful and helpful. First thing right here, this one is moderately useful and helpful. This is a SPDIF conversion cable from a 3.5 millimeter TS connection to a male RCA, and you see it is, you know, only this long. It's barely any longer than the DAP itself. And the only reason I bring that up is like this is a nice feature to have to be able to convert from the 3.5 millimeter coax output to an RCA, but this should have been a female connector, I think, on this end here, because usually the male end goes into the back of the DAC, right, as the SPDIF connection, and so most SPDIF RCA coax cables are male connector to male connector, so that was one maybe a little goof. You either have to put this thing, you know, you either have to put this thing, you know, this far away from your DAC, which have fun with that, or find an RCA coax cable that is a female to a male, or get a female-female extender in there, and that's just adding some complexity and all of that. So that's one thing. Another accessory, this is a little burn-in dongle. Okay, plug this into the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon output, and all we really have here is a nice resistor that you can play music through this thing with this plugged in, and it will burn in the amplifier for you. Well, and the DAC, because much like the DX180, this thing took somewhere in the range of about 150 to 200 hours before I really felt like it was stopping to change sonically as I first had it. So I used a combination of this dongle thing or plugging in the Audio-Technica Narukami ATH-AWKG headphone, which also required about 100 hours of break-in time itself, and so I let this unit and that headphone beat on each other for a while. Okay, during the break-in phase. Burn in for this, break in for that phase in there as well. So that's something to keep in mind. This is handy because you can burn the unit in without driving yourself and the other people in your house or your apartment or whatever your dwelling situation is nuts. Okay, it's just silent. It will get a little warm up here because it's resisting the amplifiers, giving it a load to push on. If you crank the volume up here too hard though, it will drain the battery even if you are plugged into AC power here. I let it go for about 3 days when this thing was plugged in, and I came back and found out that the battery had died because I had the volume up pretty high driving this. Just backed the volume down a little bit to extend that battery life on there. Just something to keep in mind. Okay. The unit itself. Okay. Nice size screen here, 1920 by 1080 resolution. No complaints with the screen and all of that. It does come with some screen protectors. Those are hard to put on, so I went without it, and I'm just careful with my screens generally, whether it be phone or DAPs. My general rule is if you set it down and it's not in use, you put it face down. Okay, whether it's your phone or anything like that, because now if something hits it, it just hits on the back and it doesn't land on the screen. And if you put this in your pocket, you put it in your pocket such that the screen is hitting the flesh of your leg. That way, if you get hit on the outside, boom, it just hits here and the screen gets pressed into your thigh. Okay, may not be comfortable, but it doesn't break the screen. All right, so that's how I do it, and I'm just careful to put it in a case or something when I put it in a bag for carrying and that sort of thing. All right, the unit itself is a little bit on the chonky side. I don't know exactly how heavy it is, but it's got a little bit of heft to it because it's a mostly metal construction. It ships with a clear plastic cover right here for protection that just goes over the metal parts, like and so forth, protects them from scratches and whatnot. And there we have this distinctive like corner cutaway here in different shape around the volume knob and so forth on that. Okay, fairly standard transport controls here with play, pause, forward, backward. We have a volume wheel right there, and then it's push it to bring the screen on, push it again to bring the screen off, push and hold for power on, off, and those options and so forth there. On the bottom of the unit, we see the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon headphone output and the 3.5 millimeter single-ended headphone output. Use the Pentacon. It's balanced output. This device was designed to be balanced. There's significantly more output power from the balance. It sounds better balanced. Okay, so if you're spending $950 for something like this, use that output. Okay, if you use this one, you're only getting like half the amplifier in use and half the amplifier power in there. Anyway, okay, on the top of the unit here, we have the USB-C port here, which is USB 3.1 for both charging and data transfer. We have a micro SD card slot here that is compatible up to 2 terabyte micro SD card. As far as I know, that's a 1 terabyte SD card I put in there for testing purposes. And then we have the 3.5 millimeter TS SPDIF output right there. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the standard operating system and the one that it boots up to by default when you first get the unit is Android based. Android 12 or 13, it's in there somewhere and all that. And so you see that we get all kinds of options where you get just standard Android stuff, where you can cycle through using the powered headphone outputs or change those to a line out or anything, change the theme, change the digital filters. There are 5 digital filters on there, actually 4, where the 5th one is like a NOS, a non-oversampling filter and all of that. And we get several other options in there as well. I mean, that's all pretty standard Android stuff. We have Mango Player built in, running on top of the Android system on there and so forth. So this Android business is not particularly interesting. It's what just about every DAP has, and it's the same as the iBasso DX180 review that I did a couple of months ago, which I'll put a link to down in the description. Exactly the same. What is interesting on this one, if we push and hold our power button here, we get options to just restart, power off, or go to Mango. And so what I mentioned earlier is that this thing has its own proprietary operating system in it, which as far as I know is also a modified Android, but it's a more stripped down operating system that is just known as Mango. So you saw the Mango software player app on this thing, which played local files either from the internal memory or from the micro SD card. I was using Linkin Park's Reanimation to do some comparisons between the two, so that's why you're seeing it on both of them. But what Mango operating system is, it really is just a complete operating system that is just a software player, right? And so it just has all, I mean, it's not the prettiest or the fanciest in thing or anything like that, but I mean it's pretty standard navigation stuff as a software player, right? And so forth on there. But I mean that's really it what it is it's an operating system that is just a software player. Now, that means it is stripped down. This will not connect to Wi-Fi, like it's completely disconnected from Wi-Fi right now. It will not do Bluetooth. The Mango operating system will only play local files, okay? Either from the micro SD card or from the internal read-only memory in there, or just the internal memory on there as well. Okay, so I mean there are several options in here to like find your music, change your display options. There's power management. There's DAC options in here. Okay, so we change the digital filters, you got the gain and so forth, go back to the DAP mode and all of that. We have MTP, okay, connected to a computer so you can do file transfer. Okay, we have system info, what do you want the volume control to do, and that sort of thing. And system info, so on and so forth. Okay, pretty standard stuff in there. But the point is like you cannot do any streaming services through the Mango operating system. Only local files. If you want to listen to Tidal, Qobuz, Spotify, Amazon Music, RuneArc, whatever, you must do that through the Android operating system on here. Why is the Mango operating system potentially attractive? Well, one, it's stripped down, right? It is only using local files for playback. So no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth signals to mess with any kind of electromagnetic interference or anything like that. And it's just a very stripped down operating system, which will do a couple of things. In theory, it should clean up the sound because there's less EMI, okay, electromagnetic interference and all that going on inside the unit because we're asking the hardware to process less at any given time, all right? That also should lead to a little bit longer battery life if the Mango operating system is well done. And I think just in my anecdotal testing, and I stress anecdotal here, the battery level indicator did tick down ever so slightly slower with the Mango operating system than it did using the Android operating system in there, okay? So those would be the advantages. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about the sonic differences between the Android operating system and the Mango operating system because I did hear a few differences on there. Now, one other thing that I want to note on this unit, and this was in contrast to iBasso's DX180, which we'll do a sonic comparison of these here in a little bit. The screen seems a little bit more sensitive to doing things than the DX180 is. So I don't know if you saw it, but I had to come in and where did my settings menu go? When I did the advanced and then I did the volume wheel control here, I had to set the volume control wheel to only when the screen is on, meaning I can only adjust the volume of this thing when the screen is on. Okay, if the screen is off, this does nothing. And the reason I had to do that on this unit, and I did not have to do this on the DX180, okay, I'm not exactly sure what the difference was, even though the screens look like they are probably about the same here, is I had to do that because when I'd take this to the gym and I would put it in my pocket and I did what I told you earlier, I would turn its screen towards the flesh of my leg, slide it in my pocket there, it would wake itself up so much, and then it would start adjusting the volume while it was in my pocket. And sometimes it would get really, really loud that I have to rip the IEMs out of my ears, okay? Or it would get really, really quiet in the middle of a set, which can be just as irritating as well. So I don't know why this unit did that and the DX180 did not, but that was just my experience with this unit, something you may want to keep in mind on that as well. All right. Let's start then turning our attention to test gear and sound. All right, IEMs that got used on this would have been the Effect Audio and Elysian collab known as the Pilgrim Noir, okay, from the 4.4 millimeter Pentacon output there, as well as the Kiwi Ears Quintet. I got that one back out because I got some new cables from Effect Audio, IEM cables that have a 2-pin and they fit that Kiwi Ears Quintet, so I was using that a little bit on here as well. Again, those are for IEMs. For full-size headphones, I tried Audio-Technica's ATH-WP900, Focal's Radiance, Hi-Fi-Man's HE1000 SE, and also a new one in for review is the Sivga SV021. Okay, they're kind of entry-level closed back. That got some time on here as well. And then playing either all local files that would have been lossless or high-res FLAC files, or DSD files that would have been from the micro SD card, using basically just using the Mango player, either through the Mango OS or through the Mango app in the Android OS. All right, I also put Rune Arc on here a little bit and use that to as an endpoint here at my house for some Rune Arc listening. This, differently than other Rune Arc pieces I have used, for whatever reason, it resampled everything to 192 kilohertz instead of 48 kilohertz. I don't know why. That's just what happened. That was completely stunning to me, but it is what happened. And I have a photo of it, sent it to a friend of mine who had this unit and also is a Rune and Rune Arc user, and he was like, yeah, that's weird. I don't know what caused that, but same kind of resampling, just up to 192 on everything through Rune Arc instead of resampling everything to this Android standard of 48 kilohertz. Okay, moving on then to the sound. Really good, right? This is a pretty neutral perceived frequency response. Remember I said the DX180 in my review, this one tilted a little bit warmer, whereas this one is more neutral. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of emphasis or recesses through the three big main categories of frequency response: bass, mid-range, treble. Okay, those all seem pretty in line with each other. The tonality, or the tonal balance, meaning the relationship between fundamental frequencies and their harmonics, is also pretty realistic, pretty natural on here as well. So if you like a neutral and kind of technical sound, but like not technical to the point where it's ever clinical or analytical, okay, this is going to be your bag. Whereas like the DX180 was a little bit like more warm and fun in its tuning, this one again is just a little bit more neutral and technical in there. But it is still quite smooth and very enjoyable to listen to. There's a fair amount of refinement on this. It's very smooth, both in terms of its tonality, but also its presentation. Right? So again, just refined, buttoned up, and smooth, complete, put together kind of sound coming out of this one. But it still maintains the iBasso fun dynamics. Like, this has a pretty active and lively, from a dynamic standpoint, sound. Pretty punchy, slammy bass in there. Very quick snaps on snare drum hits and that sort of thing. So, I mean, if you like the iBasso house sound because of its dynamic impact and how fun that is, this just has it. It's just without the added warmth that comes with the DX180. All right, so your mileage may vary as to whether or not that's good or bad. I'm just reporting that that's what my ears tell me about the sound on this unit. Detail retrieval / resolution, also excellent. It does an excellent job with texturing and pulling out fine details. Room reverbs, ghost notes, the zizzy sound, like that rosinousness of bows being dragged across strings and all of that. Excellent. The timbre is also very good. Voices sound like voices, guitars like guitars, pianos like pianos, drums like drums, and so on and so forth. Okay, to a pretty high degree here, regardless of the transducer that I plugged in, it does an excellent job with that, with a pretty realistic, natural sound to it. So that gets a thumbs up from me as well. The soundstage on this one doesn't stand out to me as being either huge or intimate. It's just kind of there and what it needs to be. If the headphone or the IEM is a big soundstager, you get a big soundstage. If the headphone or the IEM is a smaller soundstager, you get a small soundstage. So it just kind of lets the transducer do to the size of the stage what the transducer is made to do. Within that soundstage, though, there's a fair degree of holography, pretty good balance between the width and height dimensions. There is a little bit of depth to the sound, but given that this is a DAP that's under $1,000 and all of that, the depth is just okay. But that's pretty standard fare, again, for a unit of this type and of this price. Again, not wall of sound. There is a little bit of hint of depth and layering, but it's just not fantastic in that regard. But it's the lateral and the height with imaging and separation and that sort of thing that are the stars of the show in the spatial presentation on this. It does a very good job in those dimensions. Okay. Let's talk quickly then about like what the sound is like using the Android operating system versus what it's like using the Mango OS in here. And I do think the Mango OS is overall a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother. Rings out a little bit more refinement and more of like that buttoned up kind of sound yet than the Android does. And I think its noise floor is actually just slightly audibly lower. It just sounds cleaner, quieter, like more black void kind of sonic background in the Mango operating system than it does from the Android. The Android system, and I used the Mango player, the Mango app, in the Android system. So running the Mango Android app and then going to the Mango OS and then using that. So it's still Mango to Mango here with the underlying operating system just being the variable. And I thought that the soundstage on the Android Mango was just slightly bigger. Just slightly bigger. Right? Noticeable. But it wasn't quite as clean and it wasn't quite as holographic and it just wasn't quite as like refined or just buttoned up in its sound. Both of them still have excellent dynamics and hard hitting, though I think the Mango OS is still a little bit cleaner on the attack than it is from the Android OS and all of that. So these are not big differences. They are just detectable for me, and I will throw out the caveats here that it's very, very difficult to do a rapid A/B switch between the two operating systems, given that you have to restart the unit and boot it up into the other operating system every time you want to switch back and forth. And so there is, up to about a minute or so of time between listening in there as one shuts down and the other one starts up, and then you got to open the player, get to the right track, and like all of that to do the comparison. Okay, so it's not a perfect A/B, but this is just my sense that, again, the Mango OS is a little bit cleaner, quieter, more refined, is a little bit sharper and more impactful on the attack, okay, on the leading edges of tone. So it's a little bit punchier, slammier, that sort of thing. Just a slightly more textured sound and all of that, and just a little bit more holographic. But the Android-based operating system does give you just a slightly bigger soundstage. But then, of course, the Android system from a usability standpoint gives you so much more flexibility because you can install basically any Android audio app in here and you can use the streaming services, Tidal, Qobuz, Spotify, Amazon, whatever you want to put on there. Okay, because it's Android-based, where you cannot do that with Mango. So give and take there on that sonically, but it's an interesting feature to have there. All right, comparisons between this unit and some other DAPs. Here's the DX180 again. So $950, about $550, so a $400 price difference, and you can hear it. Right? So beyond the fact that the 180 is just a warmer, like kind of silkier kind of sound to it than the 260 is, like there's definitely a clear step up in technical performance here. Better tonal balance, like less harshness and all of that in the treble on here. On the 260, better imaging separation, more holographic spatial presentation. Okay, I think it actually is a little bit more dynamic even with this one because the amplifier just has a little bit more control, overall driver control than the DX180 is and all of that. So the technically superior sound here. However, the tuning and the presentation is different enough that there will be listeners that, even though this one is not quite as resolving, is not quite as holographic, and so forth, there will be listeners that prefer the 180 just because of its warmer, smoother, kind of silkier kind of profile to it over the DX260. But the price difference right here, you definitely are getting what you pay for over the 260 in terms of technical performance, going to the DX260. Which do I prefer? It depends on headphone. I do think that the added warmth of the 180 was a little bit better matched to like the Audio-Technica ATH-WP 900, which is a little bit V-shaped, but it also has a little bit of a recess in the lower mids, and so the warmth of this one helped fill that out a little bit. It still sounded good on this unit, just not as engaging overall of a sound. Like more resolution and detail here, a little bit more holography, arguably a little bit harder hitting kick drums and that sort of thing. But just like that tonality, the tonal balance of the WP900 was a better match to what the DX180 does than the DX260. But basically everything else I tried, the Radiance, the HE1000 SE, both of those IEMs that I mentioned and all of that, I preferred on the DX260. And a lot of those transducers that I talk about, they already are a little bit on the warmer, fuller kind of side of things, and so they don't need the added warmth that this gives. I liked them with this one here. So your mileage may vary, but that's how my ears heard it on this. Other DAPs that I have heard, but it's been a while, like the Hibi RS6. Again, it's been a long time since I've heard that one. My guess is this one's probably a little better. The nice thing about this is once you have it fully burned in, the warm-up time on this is a lot less than that Hibi unit there, because that Hibi is an R2R. I personally don't love R2R DAPs, not because they don't sound good, they often do, but just because it takes like 30 minutes to get them really warmed up and going. Whereas in my use cases with a DAP, it needs to be, I turn it on and it's ready to go, and this unit is more like that for me. Probably because of its Delta Sigma design. Like it has virtually no warm-up time. You turn it on, it's basically ready to go. Okay, so there's that. FiiO M11 Plus, this has a much more capable amplifier in it, lots more driver control. That one, the FiiO had some power issues. This one doesn't. As long as you're not plugging in, you know, like an HE6 or a Susvara, you probably will have plenty of power here. All right, so that will be my review of the iBasso DX260 digital audio player at $950 US, a really solid device. Okay, a very technical sound, but also still a very smooth, listenable sound with a lot of fun and engaging dynamics to it. Okay, in there, plenty of power for most even full-size headphones. Drove my HE1000 SE really well. Has the option of a stripped down operating system in there that is a little bit cleaner in its sound and also extends battery life just a little bit, okay, if you need that in there too, but really a very solid overall unit, and it gets my recommendation with almost no reservations. So if you're in the market for a DAP around $1,000 USD, put this one on the list to check out. All right, I am Wave Theory. Thanks for watching my review of the iBasso DX260 DAP. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out my PayPal, my Patreon. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels, and as always, enjoy the music.